Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mason Bishop.
Good morning. Well, I'm going to give you a 10-hour story in 10 minutes. I'm going to talk about where we are with workforce programs. Second, I'm going to talk about what can we do about it. And third, what's next for the state of Louisiana. So for a minute, I would like you to imagine what life was like in the 1930s. We heard Grover talk about 1932. I'm going to talk about 1933. My mom just celebrated her 88th birthday. She was born in 1937. She grew up in a small home in rural Maine. No indoor plumbing, had an outhouse in the middle of winter. You can just imagine what life was like. Well, in 1933, in the midst of the New Deal era, we had a law passed called the Wagner-Peyser Employment Service Act. This was to help people get jobs. In 1935, we had the Social Security Act pass. Unemployment insurance was created under that law, still exists today. Both the employment service under the Wagner-Peyser Act and the unemployment insurance program exist almost entirely like they were started in the 1930s. In 1962, we had the Manpower Development Training Act, another law to try to help people get training and work. That didn't work so well, so by 1973, we had the Comprehensive Employment and Training Act. This was the first time that Congress decided we're not going to just give funds to states, but we're going to have those funds flow down locally to provide jobs programs for people who need them. In the 1980 election, Ronald Reagan said, I'm getting rid of CETA. It was full of graft and nepotism, but he was not able to do so. And in 1982, the Job Training Partnership Act replaced CETA. And you start to see the alphabet of layers and layers of workforce programs. 1982 comes and goes. 1998, we have the Workforce Investment Act replaced JTPA because JTPA didn't work like it was supposed to. WIA was more of a work-first approach than a job training approach. 2014, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act replaces WIA, and here we are today. I would argue we do not have a workforce system in this country. You don't have a workforce system in your state, and you don't have a workforce system locally. What we have is a layer upon layer upon layer of programs all working individually, trying to serve a lot of times the same people with lots of different money and lots of different services. Number two, I would like you to imagine yourself being somebody who lacks education. Maybe you don't have any experience in college. You've been laid off from your plant. Your job just went to China. Or maybe you're a single parent with children who, again, lacks education and opportunity, and you need some help. Where do you go in your community? Do you go to the welfare office, DCFS? Do you go to the One Stop, which is what's being funded by the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act? Maybe you have a disability. Do you go to the Vocational Rehabilitation Office if you have a disability? Where do you go? And even more so, where do you go if you need services from all of those different programs and agencies? So that's our number two problem. And then number three, in the last 4 to 5 years since COVID, under the Biden administration, we have created workforce programs through the Department of Energy, through the Economic Development Administration in DC, through all these other federal agencies, and all these dollars, millions upon millions of dollars, aren't even touching, quote unquote, the workforce system. They're going to community colleges, they're going to community-based organizations, they're going to others. Broadband workforce money, apprenticeship money, CHIPS and Jobs Act money. All of these different laws have created workforce programs and workforce dollars throughout all these different agencies, and all this federal money is coming down to the state of Louisiana and all these different state agencies, community-based organizations, educational institutions, etc. So we have layers of programs. We do not have a consolidated service delivery system where people can go to a single place for help. And then we've layered even more on top of all of that in the last 4 to 5 years. So where do we go from here? In the 1990s, I actually lived in the state of Utah, and at that time, that was during the welfare reform era. And as part of welfare reform, Governor Mike Leavitt at the time said, I'm also going to reform my workforce programs. I was actually in the welfare agency at the time, and we as a group said we should be part of workforce reform. And so we created what is now you hear as the one-door model or the one-door system, where we consolidated programs, We came up with a single integrated funding system, and we created true one-stops in every community so that they're literally in the state of Utah. You have one place in your community, whether it's a small little town in Blanding or it's a large city in Salt Lake City. You go to a location and you receive and can expect to receive the same amount of services or individualized services depending on what you need. It was not an easy job. You might imagine you've got your legislative components, then you've got your administrative components. And all along the way you get interest groups and others who all say, well, don't do it this way and don't do it that way. What we did in Utah, what I would urge Louisiana to continue to do is always think about the customer first. It's not about what's best for our employees. It's not necessarily what's best for this quote-unquote system or this program. It's what's best for the people who need the services. Now, why is this important? It's important because you heard about the immediate gains that Governor Landry has had around attracting businesses and growing business and productivity and growth. But if you don't have a workforce, a skilled and educated workforce to take those jobs, what's going to happen to those businesses? Are they going to be able to grow like they need to? Well, one option might be with AI and technology is that ends up being the productivity driver, and you don't even need the workers, and so now we have even more social and economic angst in our communities. Another option is we figure out how do we consolidate, how do we streamline, and how do we make these programs work better in the state of Louisiana. So here's the good news. Louisiana has already taken the first steps under Governor Landry's leadership. Last year, there was the task force, which came up with a set of recommendations that now are being acted upon, and we heard some discussion about this in the legislature. There's legislative actions, there's executive actions that can occur to try to move this together, and that has started. So where we are today, I would say, in summation, number one, you need to acknowledge the problem, and you need to acknowledge it honestly. And I'm here to tell you it is a problem. You cannot expect the most vulnerable people in our communities to figure out how do I get the services, how do I get the education, how do I get the skills I need to perform in this high-tech economy if I don't even know where to go, or if I go, I get sent to 3 other places and I have to tell my story 3 or 4 other times in order to avail myself of the services that I can receive, to get to a point where I can take these great new jobs that are being brought into the state or grown in the state of Louisiana. That's number one, acknowledge the problem. I believe Louisiana has done that. Number two is have a bold vision of where we're going, and I think that's in process right now. I think the task force set that out in motion, and now the evolution of that bold vision needs to continue throughout legislative processes, throughout executive discussions, and through collaboration amongst different state, local, and community partners. And third, and this leads me to the next panelist that you're going to hear from, is bold leadership. And I'm here to tell you that without Governor Mike Leavitt in the 1990s, Utah would not have been able to do what we did. But because of his bold leadership and others that participated in that, we were able to accomplish something really good. Now, some may ask, why Utah? Well, during COVID, it was interesting. Coming out of COVID, I started getting calls from different governors' offices, new governors, Virginia, West Virginia, Louisiana, others. At the same time, Pelican was doing some research, and I was doing some research on my own as well and publishing through the American Enterprise Institute. And so the convergence of all these things came forward. It was interesting because Pelican and others said, you know, it looks like what you did in Utah had some impact and positive impact. Number two is I was getting a governor saying, I had one staff member tell me that they were asked, what's best in practice? It was Governor Youngkin of Virginia, his staff, being a businessman. And the answer was Utah. Meanwhile, I had been writing about Utah. Now, some people say, well, that's Utah. They do things different there. Louisiana is different. That's absolutely true. But within that framework, there were things we did that apply to anybody, anywhere. And so those principles are what Louisiana is working on right now, looking at legislatively, looking at from executive actions. And I'm here to tell you that I think it's a really exciting time, and I think it's absolutely imperative that this vision be driven forward. Because again, without that, I think we're going to see more social angst, we're going to see more economic angst, and we're going to see more citizenry feeling like their government is not working on behalf of them, but is working against them. So again, with that, I would like to just conclude. I think the bold leadership, Susie and Allie and others I've had the opportunity to work with have done an amazing job. Daniel and Aaron with the Pelican Institute, unbelievable. And again, that leadership is so critical, and I'm just so appreciative and feel that you all are very fortunate to have that kind of leadership and representation in your state government and in your Pelican Institute partner. So with that, thank you for having me, and I'm always here to be helpful, and appreciate the opportunity to give you a few comments. Thank you.